Greetings, welcome to the OPI Lifecycle Working Group for October 3rd. The two topics that we have today are redfish management and then boot synchronization of devices. We've previously been reviewing the lifecycle markdown that has, I believe, Boris authored. Where do we want to get started?
We want to bring that page up and then we're just reviewing it, or what?
I mean, we could review it. I could screen share it if we want. I'll let you do that. So
Since last meeting, I added the account management per our previous discussions, and I added network management with the examples as well, and fixed the comments describing more accurately the need for rebooting of the board management control.
excellent. Probably worth noting that this is just one option. There are a couple different options that we could use. But I think we pretty much consolidate on most users will probably use Redfish and Pixie. Update device. Recovered in known state. To reset the manager. Okay. Date time, secure boot. I guess one curiosity I still have is if people truly see account management, or if they just see like rotating the password as a prime feature that they need. Network management.
I pushed several examples here, one for enable disable interface, one for IPv4, and one for IPv6. So people can have different examples, what's going on.
And these are all based on the DMTF schema.
Of course.
Very cool.
I saw also a new part of definition of terms at the top of the page. Am I correct, or I simply didn't notice that before?
That was there from the beginning. I think it's a link to the terms that we kind of discussed several times in the boot synchronization. So Aga, for you from Intel, kind of interesting to hear like your view on this page because we discussed it with Bracha from NVIDIA. They kind of like the direction at least, and Bracha, correct me if I'm wrong. But we haven't seen any comments from Intel, so we'd like, of course, everybody to agree on this direction, and maybe we can split it into concrete examples from each vendor and see that everything is supported, and then create some kind of validation tool.
Okay, yes, this is exactly the direction that we see as well. And the details that I'm not fully I don't understand yet is on how we are going to proceed with that in terms of, is it going to be like a mandatory list, or we will divide it into mandatory list plus a nice to have, or we will have like a specific list that this is only a reference that each of the vendors will build its own set. So that's not yet clear to me, but the overall direction, yes, this is, I think this is exactly where we want to go. I'm not sure if we want to also touch on, I think I saw the secure boot, but I'm not sure about other parts of provisioning of the device, but I think it's maybe that's not so critical at that point.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by provisioning of the device?
For example, providing some certificates.
Part of secure boot, I just didn't post the examples themselves.
Okay. Okay. So if that's under that, that's okay.
Posted just the reset of keys, but not the certificate provisioning. Is definitely something I would like somebody to post as well as an example how to provision.
Okay.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hello everyone. I mean, this is Rahul from Marvel.
Hi,
So, I mean, hey Boris. So I also got the Redfish commands reviewed internally. So I think commands look good for us also, except the secure boot part. I think internally the team was not too interested to include secure boot in the Redfish command. So that was our internal perspective as well. So
Excellent. Thanks. Bracha, any comments from you before I can answer Aga questions going forward?
First of all, it's a very good document. Thank you for putting everything together. I started, we started to run this command to make sure that we are supporting. So we didn't run everything because lack of time, but we are in a progress to make sure that we are supporting everything here.
No, excellent. So not sure what people think about the next steps. Like I have in my mind, I can share what I'm thinking. So first of all, I'm thinking about splitting this page into like per vendor, so they can like Bracha and Aga and their whole, you can follow up and actually feel with real concrete examples that things are working on your specific DPUs, IPUs. Second of all, ARM proposed to help us building a schema that is going to be mandatory versus optional and in JSON. So I think that's a good next step. So we can actually take each command at a time, debate whether it's mandatory across DPU vendors or it's optional. Like for example, secure boot, if Marvell thinks they don't want to implement that, that's fine. So we can debate it and then create a schema, which is going to be a subset of DMTF, obviously, that we will mandate on those DPU devices across everybody. The idea is to minimize OEM and optional fields as much as possible and to come to a standard kind of conclusion. That's number two. And number three is I would like to see integration of this into some kind of existing orchestrators. So here, maybe Julia, you can help us with Ironic, and we can also start engaging with Canonical BMS and others existing orchestration systems, because basically the entire idea here is to help those orchestration systems to avoid split in the code and to treat all the DPU devices the same as much as possible.
And also it helps the communities to understand the requirements, because we may have features that 90% of our customers use, but in this case, if there's a reason to have the extra 10% of features, then we need to understand why and the motivation and all those details so that we can help ensure that it's enabled or that there's a path for that. So I think what you're proposing makes a lot of sense. I think the Redfish validator schema makes a lot of sense as well. I think we'll just have to work through that one step at a time, since we're sort of in that transition phase from initial discovery and some data collection to, okay, now we need to look at standardization across vendors.
And from the initial discovery, just to add on what you're saying, Julia, from the initial discovery, Aga, Bracha, Rahul, if you see that some subsystems are missing here, or specific examples like you already mentioned, please either message in Slack, open pull request, open issue, or we want to be as comprehensive as possible in the discovery phase to see, okay, we're covering all the bases, and then we can start discussion whether it's an optional or mandatory field. But at least I wanted to have in this page a complete list of the things that we feel is necessary for the lifecycle provisioning to cover.
Sure, I'll try to get more comments from internal teams.
Even if the group will decide eventually, look, this is maybe interesting only to some vendors or to some customers, so we are not going to mandate it, that's fine. This page specifically doesn't say which one are we actually mandating versus optional, because I felt like that after the discovery phase, we will get into that exact discussion of, okay, let's decide which are mandatory and which are optional.
I think that makes a lot of sense. One thing that I'm curious is if anyone has looked at initializing some sort of serial over LAN with the Redfish BMC. It was such an embedded feature in IPMI that I'm not sure many people have actually ever implemented anything beyond that. So I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I talked to the Redfish chair about this, and actually Redfish supports serial over LAN as well, and I'm just waiting to free some of my time to actually post an example of how it's done.
Okay, is it just like the you're connecting to an SSL or a TCP socket?
Yes.
Okay, easy enough.
I'll post under this debug device the last comment. There is Explorer SOL, so I'll post an example of how it's done.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that the option has long been in the schema, but I don't think anyone actually implemented much over the first few years of Redfish's existence.
Yeah, I think OpenBMC has some implementation right now, and
oh, that's awesome. So, do we want to set a goal or a time, or how do we want to tackle working on a schema document? Do we just want to wait for feedback from within organizations first?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that in detail, like in case of Marvell internal teams, same on Intel side. I'd like to focus on the details of each of those areas that we're discussing here, and make sure that we didn't miss any. Hopefully I would be able to provide that feedback next week or in 2 weeks max. So from our side, then we could move forward.
Will you be able, Aga, also to do like what Bracha started in NVIDIA, to run these commands and see if things working, just to make sure that we are not very theoretical? I want to be like hands-on on those things.
This is something I cannot commit right now, but at
Mhm.
least we can plan for it.
Excellent. Rahul, same on your side. Can you try
Yeah.
discuss internally whether you can put resources to actually execute those commands?
Yeah, I'll try to get more data on it. Yep.
And Vipin, on your side, I know Pensando doesn't have any Redfish server, so we discussed several times, and I just wanted to circle back. Is it still an option to run the server, Redfish server on your ARM cores and translating that into internal commands, something like that?
Boris, it should be possible. I need to find out if there are resources to get that going.
Mhm.
Let me get back to you guys.
Just please don't take the OpenStack Sushi tools package and use that. As someone that's committed code into that, it's for development testing only. And I have people asking every couple of weeks to use it for virtual machine, to wrap virtual machines. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. Just people have used it as a starting point for such things.
On schema validation, I don't see Summer here, who suggested to get going with the schema validation from the ARM side, but maybe, I don't know, Daniil, you're also from ARM, right? And Dong, obviously.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So can you try to follow up with Summer between you and him? Can you maybe help us start on the schema validation JSON for those commands, so we can then and some validation tooling? I know the MTF also has, so we can start testing our DPU vendors with the existing schema, existing toolings, to see what's supported, what's not supported, and how it's done.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll talk to Summer. I will discuss that, what the approach will be.
Mm-hmm. Integration into orchestration systems. Julia, what's your take on Ironic taking this schema and actually adopting it, implementing it to managing DPUs?
So we have discussed providing API services for or we've started discussion of providing API services for some of the endpoints in our workflow. That is an open discussion that will take place, I want to say, the week of October 27th, 23rd to 27th. When we meet for our project teams gathering, which is where we do planning for the next 6 months. Overall, we basically already support I'll call the essentials. I believe we have the ability to set boot mode, to boot the cards under these schema configure under the proposed schema usage. I think we can do certificate management. We can do secure boot. We can't do things like change users, and that's an open discussion item. We don't change the logging, but we have a couple other things that we do. They're above and beyond what is in that schema document. But we do those things for full servers. So I think it's the needful point is probably what is the expectation upon the orchestrator? What is needed as well, and that's probably not a Redfish or a Redfish validator schema. That's probably a discussion, if that makes sense.
For me, the requirement from the orchestration, like Ironic, Bemas, and others, is to first manage inventory of servers and DPUs in those servers independently. First. Second, and maybe we should document this, but second
We
is to
absolutely
try to
document. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Second is to try to match what the DPU belongs to which server. That's part of the inventory thing, the mandatory thing that all our customers at least would like to see. And the third piece is provisioning DPUs like we provision servers. So basically flushing initial images, reboot stuff, software updates of all the components, the NIC portion, the ARM bootloaders, whatever. Playing a little bit with the settings, whether it's, at least boot order, but in that kind of space.
So if we were to articulate this into general problems or general workflows as like a table, that would probably be fairly helpful, because then we could go through what exists today and then fairly easily go, oh, here's how you do it in our use model, or here's the way to approach this. And I think the same would be for any provisioning tool. Like, for example, Metal 3 doesn't have the lower level concepts yet of a DPU inside a machine, but you could basically use it for at least provisioning, but you'd still have to track and figure out what is separate and what you're deploying. And that is not ideal, and hopefully we'll fix that in the future. So I think it makes sense. It's a good starting place. We want to start a Scratch document with some basic scenarios and turn that into a page on GitHub.
Yes, we can do it.
Sorry, what was that? I didn't quite make that out.
Yes, I said that we can do it. So you mean that you want to start to illustrate some basic flows that we should support, and make sure that we cover all the necessary Redfish schemas for these flows.
I think so, yes. That helps
Okay.
basically tie in the user requirement all the way through to an API schema if one's required. Or at some point it becomes, okay, this may never be a thing in this orchestrator, but here's how you can achieve this. Or here's supplemental documentation or whatever. And it can be on a case-by-case basis because every orchestrator is opinionated.
Okay. Sounds good. So maybe, we can start with the first boot of the system in the data center, and
I suspect the first boot we interact, or anyone interacts with the DPU, will not be the first boot of the machine, though.
yeah, not the first boot. I mean, in when the XPU try to connect to the data center and do the provisioning. Maybe this is the basic flow.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay, do we want to move on to boot mode synchronization?
Sure, yes, please.
You sound like you're looking forward to this discussion.
Yes.
Okay, where were we in this discussion?
So I think the last time we, I think maybe it was Lee who updated, or someone updated the flow diagram.
Coordination, you mean?
Yes.
So first of all, I think there are several technical things that we need to start doing. Today, this page still includes all the three options that we discussed. So I think, if I remember correctly, there was a vote or something like that, that we chose option number 3. So technically, we just need to refactor the pages to move something of, this page to like maybe, I don't know, legacy, history, whatever, and then clearly state that this is our boot coordination option that we currently picked, is option number 3 with, PLDM as our main communication protocol with all the references and stuff. And then what we are still missing is mapping the PLDM schema and PLDM status registers to what we need from the boot synchronization. Correct me if I'm wrong here, present, and Lee.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, yes.
And so I think that Gal was working on updating this page. I'm not sure what's the status. I will check with him.
Excellent.
It seems like we have some pull requests for this repo. With Marvell review requirements is one of them. Then again, these are also kind of out of date. Most recent is June. So I guess we do need to find out where that update is at, but it does sound like Boris has a good point that we probably need to start mapping the registers.
We also discussed several times that, at least for this kind of work, I do believe that DMTF maybe is a better body to standardize on this. So I wanted kind of to see if people want to move these discussions or split the discussions and somehow drive these discussions with DMTF versus just an OPI, because DMTF started to cover smart NICs and DPUs as well, as we know, and seems like this can be a better fitted discussion in that space.
Yeah, so I think that after we will have all the boot status finalized, then we can push it through one of NVIDIA managers to the DMTF.
Yeah, I remember,
So
I think we mentioned Yuval, it can help us.
Yes,
bring
yes.
it up.
Yeah, so we just need to close the boot status in order to move it forward.
Okay, let's start closing it. What do we need to close?
Do you have the boot status option? Did Gal updated the docs or?
Boot
Maybe it's
progress
only in the
register
Slack
one.
he wrote it. I don't remember if you. I think he just wrote it in the Slack. in the
Register
meeting
196 boot progress on the page.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Julia, do you mind the scrolling down to the register 196?
There you go.
So last time we discussed it, Gal provided the proposal from NVIDIA side to the boot progress status. It's not updated here. I can put it in the chat.
Was
Maybe.
that the Slack discussion on the boot progress?
Yes.
In
Mm-hmm.
Redfish?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because the Redfish only defines I want to say 7 states. One of them is an OEM field option. But if we're talking about the PLDM messaging, then obviously that's a bit more verbose.
Yes, so we are talking about the PLDM states that we would like to change this current definition because it's missing many possible states that can help us to understand what is the device status. So
I also
what Yuval told me is once we are finalizing the boot progress states, you can take it to DMTF.
Excellent. I also wanted to point that Lee uploaded the document that Dell implemented for NCSI boot synchronization with vendors. I posted it in the chat. I also will post it in Slack. I also will post here in the chat, and these also have the boot status response with all different states, so we can also use that as maybe a reference to defining what states we actually using in implementation in production today. So that may help us focus the discussion what states we need to define in PLDM as well.
I guess sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that this, I'm just looking now on the Dell documentation. So the states are almost correlated to the one that we proposed. So maybe we can see the differences in
I think in order to
choose
move
what
forward, we just need to put it in front of us and just have a discussion and decide on this.
Mhm.
What is a proposal for defining the boot status, and then Bracha, you want to share? You want to kind of post it somewhere so we can.
So
actually...
it's over the Slack. So maybe Julia, if you are already showing, and I see that you have the documentation of Lee. So,
I am attempting to do so. GitHub seems to be thinking.
Bracha, can you bump the thread with Gal on the proposal? Let's see the status agenda, but not the actual thread.
Let me see how I'm doing it.
You can copy link of the message and then post it.
Yes, okay.
I guess Zoom updated.
I see it now in a meeting summary, meeting notes, right?
Yeah, meeting notes.
5.9, right?
Yes.
Boot coordination, NVIDIA proposal for boot progress. Okay, we can see it. So Reza, how you want to take it? We can discuss the proposal and then, I don't know, one at a time, like what people think we should do.
Yeah, let me take a look and have the team and review it internally. I'm sorry I missed this.
No worries.
Um,
I'm thinking how to post it as a picture. Yeah, I posted it in the chat as a picture as well, so people can we can share it and look at it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, at Marvel, we reviewed it internally and we are okay with the proposal. So
Oh, excellent. From the technical perspective, I guess pull request, right, to the change, or maybe a new page. What do you think? Just on this boot progress steps.
yeah, better to have it on the GitHub. Yeah.
On the new page, you see? Rahul?
No, there's a page for boot progress, right? So we can add it there.
Okay.
I think there was one more discussion regarding what would happen if the DPU gets a request to reboot or
Yeah.
from different sources. So I think there was a discussion regarding that as well.
Yeah, absolutely it was. So let's one thing at a time. Lee, where did you when you originally posted the 196 boot progress just from the PLDM itself, right? And you just narrowed it down to the things that you think are valuable, right?
Correct.
So what
Yeah.
we can do is we can take
Having
your boot progress in a separate page, lay out this proposal from NVIDIA on top of it, and like, I don't know, review it, discuss it.
Yeah, I think what we need also is to give a clear information on which states are informational and which are like triggering some behavior and might be mandatory, because not all of them might be present in each of the system, but there might be some that trigger some action on the orchestrator side or whatever. So I think that information is also missing here.
I agree.
I think that we have a problem to provide this information because each DPU behaves differently. I mean, the states may be common, but the internal state in the DPU may be different.
But I guess it's more from the user perspective, Raha. Like, is user of this, which is in this case the platform BMC, right? The server, Dell, HP, Supermicro, the servers themselves. What it's supposed to do with this kind of information? What is expected of him to do, right? Because we're not doing this just, you know, to standardize the fields only. We also want to understand what type of behavior we're doing on the server side, because we want to minimize the amount of differences we as servers, I'm speaking for Dell now, implementing with each and every vendor.
Yeah, I mean, to me, most of the states, even OS running, right, is informational. I mean, what you want is probably to look for we need another service state that we key off of that says everything is ready to go. And if you need to boot off of this device, it's all you know, all the PCIe devices have been established, right? And then on the shutdown side, the other direction, I think the low power standby is not as helpful to me as shutdown. which means that there's no activity going to storage, like you won't end up corrupting the file system running on the ARM cores. For the OS running on the ARM cores, yeah. And those are kind of key states, like when I get shut down, I know that it's safe to remove power from the DPU without causing any damage.
I'm
So-
thinking tactically, how can we capture all this? Like we have the NCSI reference that we are shipping to daily. We
Yeah.
have this, we have what PLDM supports today. We have this proposal. And then on top of this, we want to add metadata, like what each state actually means to do. And then we need to feedback from all the DPU vendors what they think about this and iterate on this. I'm just thinking tactically.
All right, yeah, so I think
Discussion,
this-
Slack, GitHub, how we lay all of this information in front of us, because currently it's just bits and pieces here and there, some of GitHub, some in Slack, some in specs.
Mhm. Well, I think the sequence diagram for boot coordination, and then if we had one for shutdown, right? I think that was the start, right? Because that tells you this device is sending this device a message and it's taking an action, right? As much as, you know, we could, because that's what you really want, right? You want to know what is the coordination that's happening between the server and the DPU, right?
But anything missing from the existing diagram? We have this on the coordination MD page. We have the diagram here with, you know, hold enumeration and through request for response and the update boot statuses and stuff. Maybe it's not detailed enough. This is what you're saying?
Well, so, yeah, I mean, just which update boot status am I looking for to proceed in the sequence, right? And I'm not sure.
I think the diagram shows sort of the main flow, but what this is showing here are, you know, a more comprehensive list of possible status.
So you want kind of sequence diagram? Okay, this status came from the DPU, then take this action.
Yeah, and I don't think it necessarily has to be in the form of a flow chart. Maybe it's just like you mentioned, you know, sort of a metadata, a table.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the point was made that you don't necessarily know if the applications are running on the device before, because the OS is running could just mean that the operating system has reached the point where UEFI firmware shut down its interaction and the operating system is in full control. That operating system may not yet be ready, and unless you have a way to know the applications are ready on the device, then there's no real way for you to safely proceed booting a system. And depending on the use case, it might be completely disjointed, and that might be okay. So flow diagram is going to get very complex, whereas a chart at least kind of gives us a starting point to discuss and try and work through what do we really need to provide and how does it really need to interact.
I just feel that we have to, like, at least again, I'm going back tactically. Tactically, at least for me, it's very hard because all this information is being dispersed in different places. So I'm thinking, like, do you want me to create a page with all this in the same place? We can paste the NCSI, we can paste this proposal, and then we can see in front of us and kind of iterate on this.
I think that's a very prudent thing to do. So really would appreciate if you did that. Thank you.
Yeah, I would also vote for having that all in GitHub because it's very convenient.
Okay, so I'll do that today, and just wanted to quick touch Vipin from the Pensando side. If we have something like that over PLDM, this is something like you can investigate internally whether it can be supported, it's a good direction versus the NCSI that you have today or something else, whatever it is you have.
Yeah, definitely. I missed probably last few meetings on this. Let me see where are the details on this one? Is the one you're showing there on the GitHub page?
Yes, this
Okay.
is basically the proposal to have the existing boot progress register from PLDM 196 and the proposal to extend it. Once we internally in OPI agree how to extend it, what we wanted to do is to take it to PLDM in DMTF and make them an official change into the boot progress register.
Okay, got it.
So that's a page that's a kind of proposal that we need Pensando to review and give feedback. Like,
Sure, Boris. Let me go over the details here.
and Rahul, you said Marvella is reviewed this as well, and you don't have any amends, additions, removals, comments.
Yeah, we have a subset of this internally, so I'll check if we can publish that. But yeah, I think we're on principle good with this.
Yeah, I think if you have a subset that you feel comfortable with, it's also available to state it, right? So you feel comfortable with number, 1 to 5, and all the rest is either don't care or you're not planning to implement. But at least this information is also available.
Yeah, I'll check. What can I share? Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I think that what else we need to do here is to link some of these states to the boot sequence diagram and to the shutdown. As Lee mentioned before, like OS is running a low power standby. So some of the states here will be mandatory eventually in the boot status, in the boot sequence, in the shutdown sequence. Not all of them are mandatory.
Yeah, I think that the purpose of those boot states is there are two groups of them, because one of them is important in that boot and winding back. I mean, when we are shutting down, and the extended list is needed when you're trying to diagnose what went wrong with your system. If, for example, you did not get from one stage to the other. And in our boot sequence diagram and shutdown diagram, probably, I don't think it's going to be that crowded, because there will be just a few critical states out of this list to put them there.
So, one other thing, there was so boot progress really, in the PLDM state sensors was only covering boot. It didn't really cover the other side. And then they had a different state sensor for shutdown, I think. Does that make sense?
For termination status, you mean?
Well, they had like there was like a reset sensor, reset cause, things like that. So if you wanted to initiate a shutdown, you did it through a different state sensor. And then there was like so there were other sensors for the shutdown side. Anyway, I can try and
No, you posted it on the original page. It's there. You have the PLDM sensors. I'll post a link here in the chat so people can click on it. But you mentioned there are 3 registers, basically 128 for software termination status, 192 for boot and restart cause, and 196 for boot progress.
Okay, so I think we should focus on all 3 of them one at a time. So this one is for boot. And then we should go also and compare, for example, the PLDM and CSI states for all 3 of them. And then map them to the sequence diagrams that we have started with.
Yeah, so like on the shutdown case, I would be pulling the sensor the set ID 129, it'd be looking for state 7 graceful shutdown to know that that the XP is in a state that I can remove power. Or I could see if I saw another one, I guess critical stop. If I saw that it was dead, then I have to proceed to, right? So
I guess one downside might be that this may not be exposed to orchestration systems through Redfish.
No, it's absolutely out of the question for orchestration system. This is 100% internal between the DPU and the BMC of the server of the platform.
Well, not necessarily, because if you have an orchestration system that's managing both, you may run into cases where you don't. May is probably the wrong word. You will run into cases where you probably do not want to shut down the DPU or the overall system until it has reached certain states. And if you have to shut down the operating system and then shut down the DPU separately.
I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm saying that until today, this discussion was 100% internal between the server and the DPU.
Oh, yeah.
We can then discuss.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is it would be worthwhile if this was exposed and the DMTF was aware that there is a need to expose such information.
So DMTF Redfish at least schema already have the boot progress for sure.
It has boot progress, but in terms of 129, what it believes the actual termination and shutdown state is, or should be. It's kind of the opposite. You probably want to know what's going on to make decisions at some point.
yeah, well, so there probably needs to be a mapping between some of these states and if the Redfish variables aren't identical.
I mean, for boot progress, we only have the 6 or 7 options today. That would need to be extended if we were to be able to view into the card and the status therein. I don't know. I do think the point of reaching some sort of consensus and then going back to the DMTF is probably a good idea overall.
Absolutely. What I'm saying, we have like two different things with DMTF. One is on PLDM, which cannot be exposed to the orchestration or users, and then with DMTF Redfish, and expanding on that to what they already have is how we expose this to the customers.
I agree completely. Well, we are at time. Do we have any further discussion, or do we want to figure out what we're going to discuss next week?
I think just one technical thing on. So how do we agree to comment on what Boris is planning to place there on GitHub? Do we want to do it through pull requests or in some other form?
I'll create a new page with all the existing information and the proposal as a page without a pull request. And then on this page, we can then iterate with pull requests and see the progression. Because initially, at least, I would like to see one page with all the information. Otherwise, it's very difficult And then on this page, we will iterate until we reach the final state of what we agree upon. Does it make
Good.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.